In a text pulled from the dark of Cave 4 at Qumran, the ancient authors wrote down what they believe sings before the throne of God. And it was not only the angels. If suppressed history and the texts they removed from Scripture are what you came for, subscribe right now and hit the bell. This channel goes straight to the manuscripts and the fragment numbers mainstream scholarship never connects. Now, let's go deeper. This one was not banned by a council. Nobody voted it out. It was buried by silence, left out of the famous story of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the story everyone tells about the community rule and the war scroll, because it does not sound like prayer. It sounds like a report. Someone describing a place they had seen. The text has a name, the Songs of the Sabbath Sacrifice. And here is why it matters. The Qumran community did not read this as poetry. They read it as a description of the heavenly temple, the real one, the room where the throne sits. What waits in its innermost chamber changes how you read the whole cycle. Hold on to that, because we are walking toward it. First, the evidence that this is a real preserved document and not a curiosity. The scholars cataloged it as 4Q400 through 4Q407, 8 separate copies out of Cave 4 alone. Then a 9th copy, found not at Qumran at all, but at Masada, the mountain fortress. That copy is cataloged as Mashir Shab, and a 10th, 11Q17, from Cave 11, 10 copies. Read that number as a decision. Somebody wanted this to survive. Think about the Masada copy for a second. That fortress was under Roman siege. People carried this liturgy up a cliff into a place that was going to fall and kept reciting it. You don't drag 10 copies of a throwaway poem to your last stand. And they read it on a schedule. 13 songs, one for each 7th Sabbath, spread across a quarter of the year. A fixed cycle. Precise, not something you pulled out when you felt moved. This was cultic order, set to a calendar, timed to the day. Now the shape of the thing. The text builds 7 sanctuaries, 7 heavenly temples, one inside the next, and it moves you inward, song by song, deeper toward the center. The Hebrew names the ones who serve there, the Elam and the Elohim. The ministering spirits, this is an angelic priesthood, and the liturgy records their praise, tier by tier, rising as you go in. So, 2 questions sit in front of you, and they don't let go. Why 7? And what waits in the 7th sanctuary, the innermost one, when you finally reach it? Because once you see the structure, you notice something. This does not read like general worship. It reads like the order of service for one exact room. A throne with wheels beside it, living creatures around it, a house of crystal and fire, and a great glory seated inside. And here is the thing. That room is not unique to this scroll. 2 other ancient texts describe it. We can name them, right here, at the door. Ezekiel and the throne vision of Enoch. The Sabbath songs read like the liturgy written for exactly that chamber. Look at where the parallel actually sits. Ezekiel chapter 1 gives you the throne, the wheels within wheels, the 4 living creatures. Ezekiel chapter 10 shows you the same machinery again, moving. And 1 Enoch chapter 14 puts a man inside it. Enoch walks into a house of crystal and fire, and he sees the great glory seated on the throne. Ezekiel and Enoch describe the room. They tell you what it looks like. What they never give you is the order of service. What is being sung in there? That is the gap the songs of the Sabbath sacrifice step into. They are the praise liturgy for the throne room those 2 texts describe. The same chamber, from a different door. And then you reach the 7th song. This is the strangest line in the whole cycle. The text speaks of the tavnit, the structure, the built thing itself. And it says the walls, the pillars, the corners of the debir, the innermost sanctuary, give praise. The verb it uses is not a verb of standing there. It is a verb of blessing. The stones bless. Read that line again, not as poetry, as a report from priests who never wasted a word. Now, the mainstream reading has an answer for this, and it is a fair one. Scholars call it poetic personification, a figure of speech, the author dressing up cold architecture in warm language to make the temple feel holy. Walls do not really praise anything. It is a metaphor. That is the standard explanation, and I want you to hold it honestly, but press on it. Because of who wrote this, these were not poets reaching for a pretty image. These were priests obsessed with precise cultic order. They numbered the sanctuaries, 1 through 7. They fixed the calendar, so this cycle landed on the 7th Sabbath, 13 songs across a quarter of the year. Every element in their world had a place and a function. They did not decorate. When men this exact hand a verb of blessing to a wall, you do not shrug it off as flourish. You treat it as deliberate. Before we move on, stop for a second. What you just heard is the part that changes everything, but it only makes sense written out next to the original notation. The passages, the chapter cross-references, the translated text, I put all of it into a written document. It's linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. Take 5 seconds, grab it, and come back, because what comes next builds directly on it. Back to the songs, because the Tavnit line is not the ceiling. It is a step. Songs 6, 7, and 8 do something the earlier songs do not. They multiply the praise. The voices stack. You get chariots within chariots, one nested inside another, and the text starts counting mouths that are not human. The tongue of the second cherub, the third, the fourth, each one adding its blessing to the rising sound. The structure is climbing. You can feel it building inward, sanctuary by sanctuary, toward the 7th. And it is holding something back. It has not yet told you what waits in the innermost room. Because the peak is not the angels multiplying. The peak is what the climactic songs say about the sanctuary itself. The paved floor of the vestibules, the beams, the ornamented fabric of the building, all of it, said to utter praise. The temple comes alive. That passage is the strongest line in the entire cycle, and it is next, the innermost room. The paved floor of the vestibules, the beams, the ornamented fabric of the sanctuary itself. The climactic songs say these utter praise, not the priesthood standing in the temple, the temple. Read it closely and slowly. Here is what the cycle drives toward. In the climactic material, the text turns from the ministering spirits to the room around them, and it describes the paved floor of the vestibules, the beams of the ceiling, the ornamented structure of the debir itself, giving voice. The building speaks. The verb is a verb of blessing, the same root the priests used for the Elohim, who stand before the seat. The stones bless. The corners bless. The walls of the innermost sanctuary open and praise. Sit with that for one line. The floor is praising. The walls are praising. And these men wrote it down as fact. This is what waited in the 7th. 13 songs, 7 sanctuaries, the listener climbing inward one Sabbath at a time. And this is the answer to why 7, and what stands at the center of it. The praise does not stop with the angels. It passes into the stone, the debir, the innermost room, the one place a single priest could enter once a year. And in this liturgy, it does not fall silent. It sings back. Now the interpretation, and I will mark it as interpretation. The text does not say the temple was conscious. It does not use that word. It gives no theology of a living building. So I will not put one in its mouth. But look at the structure. A liturgy that climbs through 7 heavens and, at the peak, hands the praise to the architecture itself. The text does not make this connection. The structure does. And once you have seen it in the wording, you cannot read the 7th song any other way. Read it against the rest. In 1 Enoch chapter 14, Enoch walks into a house built of crystal, its floor of crystal, its ceiling like the path of the stars, and the whole house burns without being consumed. A living house of fire. In Ezekiel chapter 1 and chapter 10, the wheels are not machinery. They are full of eyes, and the spirit of the living creatures is in the wheels. The structure moves. The structure sees. And here at Qumran, the structure blesses. 3 traditions, 1 pattern. And here is my reading, not the text's claim. Before the throne, the line between the worshipper and the place he worships in dissolves. Between the builder and the building, the priest, the angel, the pillar, the paved floor, at the center they are all doing the same thing. They are all singing. And this is the part I keep coming back to. Nobody was forced to keep this. It was copied 10 times. It was carried up the rock at Masada, into a mountain fortress under siege, by people who knew Rome was coming for them, and they brought this liturgy with them. You do not haul a poem up a doomed mountain. You haul what you believe. And what they believed is written in the wording they preserved. What sings before the throne is not only the messengers, it is everything. Everything. The stone, the beam, the floor, the corner of the room. Preserved on purpose, by people who chose it over almost everything else, and buried by silence for 2,000 years until the fragments came up out of the cave. Tell me in the comments which source you think carries the most weight, Qumran, Ezekiel, or Enoch. Subscribe and hit the bell, and the next read is on screen now. Because if the temple sings, the next question is who built a temple that could? And that answer is older than Qumran.